It was late at night. The town was quiet, the streets were empty, and the lights in most houses were already off. Mr. Dalton, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes, was standing behind the counter of his small grocery shop. He was locking the cash drawer, getting ready to close. The store had been quiet all day, just like most days now. He didn't mind. He had enough money to live peacefully. What he didn't have was people to talk to, people to trust. Just as he was about to switch off the lights, he heard something strange. It was a soft knock, not on the front door but on the side. The one no customer used. It was barely a sound. He thought maybe it was the wind or some animal scratching. But then he heard it again, a soft, careful knock. Like someone was afraid to be heard, but still hoping someone would listen. Curious, Mr. Dalton walked toward the door and slowly opened it. A cold breeze slipped inside, but what truly froze him was the sight in front of him. A little girl, no more than 7 years old, was standing there. She was thin, almost too thin. Her skin looked dry, her lips were cracked, and her eyes were big and shining in the darkness like she hadn't slept in days. She was wearing a dirty old hoodie that was too big for her. Her shoes were mismatched, one sneaker and one slipper in her small hand. She held an empty plastic bottle. She didn't step forward. She didn't cry. She simply looked up at him and whispered, "Please, sir, can I have some milk?" Mr. Dalton was silent for a second. Not because he didn't understand, but because the way she asked made his chest hurt. Her voice was not begging. She wasn't crying or making a scene. She was calm, polite, and serious. Like this wasn't the first time she had to do something like this. He knelt down a little, trying to meet her eyes. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. The girl looked down at the bottle in her hand. "My mommy is sick, my baby sister is crying. We don't have food," she said softly. "I don't have money, but I promise to pay when I grow up." Mr. Dalton blinked. That one line hit him harder than anything else. A child who should be asking for toys or bedtime stories was here, offering a future promise in exchange for a bottle of milk. She didn't ask for free help. She offered a deal. Her words had more dignity than most grown men he knew. He slowly stood up and opened the door wider. "Come in. It's cold," he said, but the girl shook her head. "I can't," Mommy said. Not to go inside people's houses. He understood trust wasn't easy, especially when you had nothing. So he walked to the fridge, opened it, and took out a full bottle of milk. Then he looked at the sandwich he had made for himself earlier. Untouched, he grabbed that too, and a small chocolate bar he kept hidden for bad days. He walked back to the door and handed it all to the girl. She stared at the food with wide eyes. Her hand reached out slowly, as if she was afraid it would be taken away again. When she touched the cold milk bottle, she almost smiled, but her face stayed mostly serious, like she had more important things to do than be happy. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'll pay you, I promise. Maybe not soon, but I will." Mr. Dalton just nodded. "I'll remember that," he said. The girl turned and walked away, carefully holding the food, not dropping a single crumb. Mr. Dalton stood there at the door. Watching her disappear into the night, he didn't move for a long time. The cold didn't bother him. The silence didn't either. What stayed with him was the echo of her voice. "I promise to pay when I grow up." He closed the door finally. But something in him stayed open. For the first time in many years, he felt something more than just tiredness. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she lived. But he knew one thing he had to find out. That night, he didn't sleep well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that little face, calm and serious, standing in the cold, offering a deal like a grown-up. And suddenly, Mr. Dalton wasn't just a grocery store owner anymore. He had a purpose again. The next morning, Mr. Dalton opened his shop early, But his mind was not focused on the shelves or prices. He kept looking at the side door, half expecting the little girl to knock again, but the knock never came. Still, her voice stayed in his mind, clear and soft. "I promise to pay when I grow up." He couldn't forget the way she stood, brave and polite, even in the cold, even now. He remembered how she didn't beg or cry. She had asked with pride. And that touched something deep inside him. She reminded him of someone. Maybe a memory from long ago, maybe something he had buried. Under years of silence and business, he sat behind the counter, staring at the notebook where he usually wrote the daily sales. But today, he wrote something else, just 3 words. "Little milk girl." Underneath, he wrote, "Find her." That afternoon, he saw a group of school children passing by. Laughing and running, he watched each face carefully, but the girl wasn't among them. A few hours later, he stepped out of his shop and walked to the nearby school. It was a small public school, not far from his store. He asked the school guard if he had seen a little girl, dark-skinned, about 7 years old, carrying a milk bottle. The guard shrugged, said many kids looked like that. Sorry, Mr. Dalton didn't give up. He walked further down the street, past the bakery, past the old shoe repair shop. He looked at every alley, every corner, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. He didn't know why it mattered so much, but it did. It wasn't just about giving milk anymore. It was about something else, something he couldn't explain in words. Then, around sunset, he saw a shadow near the old factory at the edge of town. The factory had been closed for years. No one went there anymore. It was dangerous and forgotten. But there, just outside the broken gate, he saw her. The little girl was walking slowly, carrying a plastic bag in one hand and the milk bottle in the other. He followed her quietly, not wanting to scare her. She walked through a small gap in the factory fence, then disappeared behind the sidewall. Mr. Dalton waited a few seconds, then slowly followed the same path. What he saw made his heart stop for a moment. Behind the wall was a small shed made of wood and metal sheets. It looked like it was about to fall. Inside, there was a thin mattress on the floor. A woman was lying on it, coughing weakly, covered with a torn blanket. The baby was in a basket next to her, wrapped in old clothes. The little girl placed the milk next to her mother and carefully gave a piece of bread to the baby. The woman opened her eyes slowly and whispered something. The girl nodded and took the bottle. Pouring milk into a small cup, she gave it to her mother first, who drank it slowly with shaking hands. Then the girl fed the baby, smiling just a little when the baby stopped crying. Mr. Dalton stayed hidden. He didn't want them to see him yet. Something about the scene felt too pure to interrupt. He stood there quietly, watching a child act like a mother, feeding her family with the care of someone far older than her age. He stepped back, walked away from the shed, and sat down on a nearby bench. His chest felt heavy, heavier than he could remember. He had seen poverty before, but this was something deeper. This was survival. This was love. And this was dignity in the middle of nothing. He remembered how people used to praise him for his success, how they clapped when he spoke at events. But none of that meant anything compared to what this little girl had just done. She had walked through the cold night, not to beg, but to make a promise. She had kept her promise not with money, but with her actions. He returned to his store with a new idea in his mind. The next day, he packed a bag with warm clothes, food, medicine, and some clean water. He also added a soft toy, a small bear he had bought years ago but never gave to anyone. He walked back to the shed quietly and left the bag outside the entrance. Then he knocked softly on the metal sheet and walked away before anyone could open the door. The girl came out a minute later, saw the bag, and looked around. She didn't see anyone. But she smiled. A real smile this time, not forced, not guarded. She picked up the bag and took it inside, holding it close like it was treasure. back in his shop. Mr. Dalton took out a small notebook from his desk drawer. On the first page, he wrote, "Milk, 1 bottle, cost, 1 promise." He didn't need money. He needed something to believe in. And now he had found it. That night, for the first time in years, he slept with a light heart. The little girl's voice still echoed in his ears, soft and clear. "I promise to pay when I grow up." The sun was low in the sky, and the air was cold when Mr. Dalton closed his store early again. He kept thinking about the little girl and her family living behind the factory. Their faces stayed in his mind, especially the girl's brave smile when she found the care package he had left. That morning, he had restocked his shop as usual, but something had changed inside him. He didn't feel like a store owner anymore. He felt like a guardian of something fragile, something pure. He had lived many years with money, but never with this kind of purpose. That little girl had touched his soul without even trying. As he walked toward the factory again, he carried another bag. Inside it were more warm clothes, some baby food, soap, and 2 books for children. He had wrapped everything neatly. He wasn't just helping now, he was investing in her future, the way she had promised she would pay him back when she grew up. When he reached the edge of the broken fence, he stopped and waited. This time, he didn't want to just drop the bag and leave. He wanted to know more. He wanted to hear her name. Maybe talk to the mother if she was well enough. But before he could decide what to do, he heard a voice behind him. "You came back." He turned quickly and saw her, the little girl standing just a few steps away. Her hair was tied with an old ribbon and her cheeks were pink from the cold, but her eyes, they still held that same strength, like she was carrying the weight of the world without asking anyone for help. Mr. Dalton smiled and said softly, "Yes, I did. You remember?" "Me." She nodded. "You gave me milk and food and a teddy bear. I thought you might like it," he said. She smiled again, just a little. "He sleeps beside my baby sister now." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Mr. Dalton gently asked, "What's your name, sweetheart?" She looked down at her shoes and replied, "My name's Lily, and your baby sister," he asked. "Hope," she said. "Because Mommy says we still have hope." Mr. Dalton felt something tighten in his chest. Such a simple name, but so full of meaning. He bent down to her level and handed her the new bag. "This is for both of you, and for your mom too." Lily took the bag carefully, her hands shaking a little from the cold. "Mommy's still sick, but she's getting better because of the soup you left." He looked around and said, "Is it okay if I come say hello to her?" She hesitated, unsure. Then she nodded slowly, just for a little bit. "Mommy gets tired fast." She led him through the broken gate, past the rusted metal and piles of old bricks. The shed looked even smaller up close, made from broken wood and plastic sheets tied with rope, but inside it was clean. Lily had swept the dirt floor, and the corner where the baby slept was neat and warm with blankets. Her mother was lying on the mattress, her face pale, eyes half open. She tried to sit up when she saw Mr. Dalton, but Lily rushed to her side. "It's okay, Mommy. It's the kind man from the store. He gave us food." The woman looked at him with tired eyes. "I don't know how to thank you, sir." Mr. Dalton shook his head gently. "No thanks needed. Just get well. That's enough." The woman smiled weakly. "I'm Angela," she said. "We've had a hard time since my husband passed away last year. I tried everything, but then I got sick, and I couldn't work anymore." "I understand," Mr. Dalton said softly. "Lily is a strong girl. She's done more than most grown-ups would." Angela looked at her daughter with pride. "She's my heart." They spoke only for a short time. Mr. Dalton didn't want to exhaust her. He gave her the medicine from the bag and explained how to take it. Then he placed the books beside Lily and said, "You'd like to read?" Lily nodded quickly. "But I don't have books at home." "Well, now you do," he smiled. "And next time, I'll bring more." As he stood to leave, Angela whispered, "Why are you doing this, sir? So many people walk past us every day. No one stops." Mr. Dalton looked down and said, "Because your daughter came to me with more courage than most adults I know. She didn't ask for pity. She offered a promise, and I believed her." Angela blinked back tears. She's always been like that. Before leaving, Mr. Dalton turned to Lily and said, "Take care of your mom and your sister. Okay, I'll come again soon." She nodded, standing tall. "I will, I promise." As he walked back toward his store, Mr. Dalton felt lighter, like each step had purpose again. He looked at the stars beginning to appear in the sky, and for the first time in a long while, he felt proud not for his money, not for his success, but for being part of something real. And in that quiet night, one thing was clear: this story had only just begun. The next morning, Mr. Dalton sat alone at the back of his grocery store. The sun was rising, but he didn't notice it. His thoughts were still with Lily and her family, the image of her tiny home, the weak voice of her mother, and the quiet strength in that little girl's eyes had stayed with him all night for years. Mr. Dalton had lived a quiet life. He ran the store by himself, smiled politely to customers, and kept his past hidden. No one in the town really knew who he was before he moved there. They just knew he was the man with the clean shop who minded his own business. But the truth was, he wasn't just a grocery store owner. Years ago, Mr. Dalton had been a very rich man. He had made millions by investing in businesses across the country. He once wore expensive suits, attended meetings in tall glass buildings, and flew in private jets. But the people around him started to change. They only cared about his money, not his thoughts, not his kindness, only the wealth. Slowly, he began to feel empty. He tried helping people, donating to big charities, building schools in his name. But even that felt cold. The smiles were forced, the thanks were fake. So he walked away from it all. He sold most of his businesses, moved to this quiet town, and opened a simple grocery store where no one knew he was a millionaire in hiding. He thought he had left behind all the pain, but now, because of a little girl with a milk bottle, his heart had started to feel again. It wasn't the size of her need that moved him, was the way she asked, with honesty, with courage, and with a kind of hope he hadn't seen in years. Later that day, he stood in front of a dusty cabinet in the storage room. He opened it slowly and pulled out an old photo frame. Inside was a picture of a young woman and a little girl who looked just like Lily. But they weren't Lily. They were his wife and daughter, lost in a car accident almost 20 years ago. He stared at the photo for a long time. His wife had been a teacher, always helping poor children. And their daughter had the same eyes as Lily, soft but strong, quiet but full of light. After their death, Mr. Dalton had buried himself in work, built walls around his heart, and forgot what it felt like to care. Until now, the next morning, Mr. Dalton walked into the town bank. The manager was surprised to see him. He was rarely involved in money matters anymore, but Mr. Dalton asked for one thing: a private savings account, one that would grow slowly over time. He named the account Lily and Hope. He didn't tell anyone, not even them. Every week, he would put in a small amount, just enough to build a future. He didn't want to give them everything at once. He wanted to give them a path, not a shortcut. He believed in Lily's words: "I promise to pay when I grow up." Later that week, he visited them again. Lily ran to greet him with a smile. She looked healthier already. She told him her mother was sitting up now, able to eat without coughing. Hope was sleeping peacefully, wrapped in one of the warm blankets he had brought. This time, Mr. Dalton brought something different: books, not just for Lily, but for Angela too. He sat with them and read aloud, letting the sound of the words fill the small space. Lily listened closely, her eyes wide. Angela smiled faintly. She said it reminded Her of the days when she used to read to her daughters before her husband passed away. "Thank you," Angela whispered. "You've given us more than food. You've given us peace." But Mr. Dalton shook his head. "No. Lily gave me something too. She gave me purpose." After the visit, Mr. Dalton began to change slowly. He started helping more people quietly, without attention. A small bag left at someone's door. A kind word to a stranger. A pair of shoes dropped outside a home where the child had none, but none of it compared to what he felt when he saw Lily smile. He didn't want the world to know who he truly was. It wasn't about being a hero or a savior. It was about doing something real without cameras, without speeches. Just kindness from one soul to another. As the days passed, the connection between Mr. Dalton and the small family grew deeper. Lily started calling him Mr. D, like a nickname between friends. She would wave every time she saw him near the store, and he would always wave back. With a heart a little fuller each time, and every time he heard her voice say, "See you." Soon, Mr. D, he remembered something important. He had walked away from the world once. But now, he had walked back into something even better. Not a world of money and power, but a world where a little girl's promise was more valuable than gold. It was a cold morning when Mr. Dalton walked to the edge of town with another package in his arms. Inside the box were baby wipes, warm socks, a bag of rice, a jar of honey, and a small note he had written by hand. He didn't know why he wrote the note. He just felt like they should hear his thoughts, not just see his gifts. He reached the small shed behind the factory and gently knocked on the sidewall. Lily opened the curtain flap with a big smile. Her face looked brighter. Her cheeks had color now, and she wasn't shivering like before. She looked stronger, just like her promise. "Hi, Mr. D," she said cheerfully. "Mommy's sitting up today." "That's good news," he smiled. "I brought some things. Hope still drinking all the milk." Lily nodded proudly. Yes, and she started making little sounds. "Want to hear?" She giggled and held up her baby sister, who made a soft ECH noise and waved her tiny hand. Mr. Dalton felt his heart melt. This little baby, once weak and freezing, now had life in her eyes. It made him want to do more, not just for now but for their whole future. He stepped inside and saw Angela sitting up, resting against a pile of pillows. Her face still looked tired, but her eyes were calm. She gave him a soft smile. "I don't know what we did to deserve you," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong," Mr. Dalton replied, placing the package beside her. "You just had a hard turn in life. I've had those too." Angela looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Most people don't see that. They see poor people and think we're lazy or unworthy." Mr. Dalton sat down on the floor beside Lily and Hope. "I used to think I had everything. Big house, big car, big bank account. But I didn't have this," Angela asked gently. "What's this?" He pointed at Lily. "Someone who gave me a reason to feel again. She came to me asking for milk, but gave me something I didn't know I needed: trust." Angela wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. "You speak like a man who's lived many lives." Mr. Dalton smiled. "Maybe I have." Lily, sitting between them, pulled something from her pocket. It was a small folded paper. She handed it to him. "I made this for you," she said shyly. He opened the paper slowly. Inside was a crayon drawing. It showed a big grocery store, a smiling man with gray hair, and a little girl holding a bottle of milk. At the bottom, in shaky letters, it read, "I will pay you with love, not money." Mr. Dalton stared at the paper, speechless. His eyes watered, and he quickly looked away, pretending to clear his throat. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it inside his coat pocket. "This is going in my safe," he said, "next to the most valuable thing I own." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? What's that?" "A promise," he replied. "Yours." The next day, Mr. Dalton did something he hadn't done in a long time. He invited someone to visit his home. His home was quiet and filled with old memories, photos, books, and items from the past. He didn't invite many people in, but this time it felt right. He called a local doctor he knew and explained everything about Lily, Angela, and Hope. He didn't ask for charity. He paid in full, but he asked for privacy. No social media, no news, just help. He said firmly. The doctor agreed and visited the shed that weekend. Angela was checked carefully, and medicine was given properly this time. Hope was measured and found to be underweight but improving fast. The doctor smiled and said, "She's strong. She's going to be okay." That night, Angela whispered to Mr. Dalton, "You didn't have to do all this, but you did. Why?" He looked at the stars above the broken roof and replied, "Because when I had everything, I still felt empty. But now I feel full every time I see your daughter's smile." Angela reached out and held his hand gently. "You may have saved our lives." "Sir," Mr. Dalton shook his head. "No, your daughter saved mine first, before leaving." He placed the small handwritten note from the package on the floor beside Lily's drawing. It said, "Milk, food, medicine. These are things, but your courage, your heart, your promise. They are treasures, and I believe in you." As he walked away, he looked back once and saw Lily holding the note, showing it to Hope like it was a storybook. Her eyes were glowing, not just from joy, but from hope. That night, Mr. Dalton couldn't sleep, not because he was worried, but because he was full of thoughts. Something inside him had changed. He wasn't just a man helping a poor girl anymore. He was part of her story now, and somehow, that story felt like the best thing he had ever written. A few days passed, and Mr. Dalton kept thinking about Lily's words. "I will pay you with love, not money." That one sentence lived inside his heart like a seed. Growing stronger each day, he wanted to do something special, something more than food and medicine, something that would stay with her forever. One morning, he sat at his desk in the back of the store. He opened his old safe, where he kept the drawing Lily had made for him, and the little notebook he hadn't used in years. Slowly, he flipped to a blank page and wrote a strange title at the top. The Promise Contract. It wasn't legal, and it wasn't serious to anyone else, but to him, it meant everything. He wrote simple words below the title, words a child could understand. "I, Mr. Dalton, promise to help Lily and her family grow strong and happy, and in return, Lily promises to make me proud when she grows up. No money needed, just kindness, love, and a strong heart." He folded the paper carefully and placed it inside an envelope. He smiled as he sealed it. He knew this wasn't about deals or charity. It was about something deeper: connection, trust, and hope. That afternoon, he walked to the shed with the envelope in hand. Lily ran out to greet him like always. Hope was in her arms. Giggling now and trying to reach for her hair, Angela stepped out behind them. Leaning on the wall, she looked stronger, standing on her own for the first time in weeks. Mr. Dalton smiled. "I have something for you," he said, handing Lily the envelope. She opened it carefully, reading each line out loud. Her face turned serious as she read. When she finished, she looked up and asked, "Does this mean I'm important to you?" "You've always been important," he replied. "But now it's official." Angela's eyes filled with tears again, but she wiped them away and whispered, "You don't know what this means to her. To us." Lily clutched the paper to her chest. "I'll make you proud. I really will." "I know you will, Mr. Dalton said with a warm smile. "That's why I wrote it." Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to change. Angela was gaining strength every day. She could walk to the nearby market with Lily and even started helping a neighbor wash clothes for small money. Hope had stopped crying at night and had started crawling on the floor chasing after anything shiny, and Lily had turned into a tiny leader. She read the books Mr. Dalton brought her, helped her mom with cooking, and even started teaching Hope little songs. She was still a child, but her soul was far older than her years. One evening, Mr. Dalton had an idea. He had seen how smart Lily was, how fast she learned. He wanted her to go to school, not just any school, but one that could shape her into someone great. So, he called a friend from his old life, a woman who ran a private academy for children with big dreams but small chances. He told her about Lily, about her promise, about the milk, the baby, and the drawing. He didn't say he was rich. He only said, "She's special, and I want to help her become who she's meant to be." His friend listened and replied, "If you believe in her, I do too." The next day, he brought Lily a new notebook and a set of pencils. On the first page, he wrote just one line: "Every great journey starts with one step." Then he told her she would be starting school next week. Lee stared at him, wide-eyed. "But school costs money. I paid the first part," he said. "You'll pay me back later, remember?" She laughed and nodded. "With love, not money." That night, Mr. Dalton sat in his living room alone, but he didn't feel lonely. On the small table next to him sat Lily's drawing in a frame, and next to it, her promise contract. He looked at both and whispered, "Maybe the best investments don't come with interest, but with hope." At the same time, inside the tiny shed, Lily placed the notebook beside her bed. She told Hope, "I'm going to school, and one day I'll be someone big. You'll see." Angela kissed her daughter's forehead and said softly, "You already are." And so, without any cameras or speeches, a contract was made between two hearts, one old and one young. A man who thought he had lost everything had found purpose again, and a girl who had nothing but a bottle of milk had changed the life of a millionaire. Wasn't magic. It wasn't money. It was just a promise, a strange, beautiful promise between a little girl and the man who believed in her. 10 years passed quietly, but time did not forget the promise between Lily and Mr. Dalton. The town had changed. New shops had opened. Old buildings had been repaired. But one small grocery store remained exactly the same. Its paint faded, but its windows always clean inside. A framed drawing still stood on a shelf near the counter, the drawing of a little girl, a bottle of milk, and the words, "I'll pay you with love, not money." Mr. Dalton had grown older. Its back was slightly bent, and he walked with a cane now, but his eyes were still sharp, and his smile just as warm. He didn't talk much about the past, but people often noticed how carefully he looked after that single drawing. Some thought it was just a sweet memory, but they didn't know the full story. He hadn't seen Lily for many years. After she started school, her days became full. She studied hard, worked part-time jobs, and cared for her mother and sister. Angela had fully recovered and now worked as a home cleaner. Hope had grown into a happy little girl. Full of laughter and dreams, Mr. Dalton kept supporting them quietly, making sure they never ran out of food or books or chances. He never asked Lily for anything back, but deep inside, he still held her childhood promise like treasure. To him, love had already been paid many times, but he always wondered would she'll remember that promise now. After all these years, one spring afternoon, Mr. Dalton sat behind his counter reading a newspaper when the small bell above the door rang. He looked up and saw a young woman walk in. She had long braided hair, a neat uniform, and a name badge on her chest. For a moment, he didn't recognize her, but when she smiled, he froze. "Hi, Mr. D," she said softly. He blinked, dropped the paper, and stood up slowly. "Lily," he whispered. She nodded, her eyes already full of tears. She walked to him and wrapped her arms around him tightly. He held her back, smiling, but struggling to keep his tears in. "You've grown," he said finally, pulling back just enough to see her face. "And you look strong." I became a nurse, she said. Today's my first day at the hospital, but before I went, I had to come here first. He chuckled. To buy milk? She laughed. No, to pay my debt. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Mr. Dalton opened it slowly. Inside was a photo of her in her nurse uniform, standing proudly next to her mother and sister at the bottom. She had written in neat handwriting, "I kept my promise. I made you proud." Mr. Dalton held the photo close to his heart. His hands were shaking a little. "You have no idea how proud I am." They sat down together in the quiet store. Lily told him everything, how she had studied long nights under candlelight, how she had cried sometimes but never gave up, how she worked to help her mother while also looking after Hope, and how every time she felt tired, she would look at the paper she had saved the promise contract he gave her years ago. "I still have it." She smiled, "Folded in my notebook. It reminded me that someone believed in me when no one else did." Mr. Dalton listened quietly, his heart full. He thought about how strange life could be. A bottle of milk and a little promise had brought them both to this moment. One act of kindness had grown into a full, beautiful life. Lily stood and walked over to the shelf where her childhood drawing was framed. She gently touched the glass. "I was just a poor girl with an empty bottle," she whispered. "You gave me a chance like I was already somebody." Mr. Dalton came beside her and said, "You were never just a poor girl. You were always rich in heart, in courage, in love. I only helped you see it." Before leaving, Lily hugged him one more time. "I don't know how long you'll be around, Mr. D," she said, "but I want you to know you've changed my whole world." He smiled with tired eyes. "And you changed mine." As she walked out of the store, the little bell rang again. Mr. Dalton watched her go, and this time he didn't feel old or lonely. He felt complete that night. He sat in his favorite chair with Lily's new photo in his hand. He looked up at the stars through his window and said softly, "Debt paid." In full and miles away, in a small hospital room, Lily placed a new photo on her desk, her with Mr. Dalton, his grocery store behind them, and her uniform shining in the light. On the back, she had written a single word, "Grateful." A few weeks after Lily's visit, the people in town noticed something different. Mr. Dalton seemed happier. He smiled more often, talked to children passing by, and even put flowers in front of his store. Some people thought maybe he had found family again. Others said he must have gotten good news, but no one knew the truth except Lily and her family. Lily started working full-time at the hospital. Her name was on a shiny badge now, Nurse Lily Johnson. She moved her family into a small, clean apartment near the hospital. Hope had her own bed now, and Angela no longer had to work long hours. Everything was slowly becoming better, safer and brighter. One Sunday afternoon, Lily stood outside a small community hall. She held a folded paper in her hand, and her heart was beating fast. Inside, chairs were set, people had gathered, and a small wooden stage stood under a banner that read, "The Dalton Scholarship Fund Launch." It was Lily's idea. After years of being helped quietly, she wanted to help others. She wanted Mr. Dalton's kindness to keep living even when he was no longer there. She had talked to some hospital staff, local leaders, and even her teachers from the past. And with their support, she had created something beautiful. The fund would help poor children like her kids who needed school books, uniforms, or even just a warm meal. She had already saved part of her salary every month to support the first students. But she didn't want to name the fund after herself. She wanted it to carry the name of the man who believed in her first. When Mr. Dalton entered the hall that day, everyone stood up and clapped. He looked around, surprised, and then saw Lily standing on stage, holding a microphone. She waved at him and said with a big smile, "Please welcome the man who changed my life with one bottle of milk." The room went silent as Mr. Dalton walked slowly to the stage. His cane clicked gently on the wooden floor. Lily helped him step up, and then she turned to the crowd. "This man gave me a chance when I was a child with nothing." She said he never asked for money, never asked for praise. All he wanted was a promise. And today, I stand here to say he kept it, and now I'm starting a new promise. One that will help other kids just like me. Everyone clapped again. Mr. Dalton held her hand tightly, tears forming in his eyes. He didn't speak much, just nodded and whispered into the microphone, "If one little girl can change the world with love, imagine what we all can do." The room was filled with warmth, not just from the lights, but from hearts opening. People donated freely that day, not because they were rich, but because they were inspired. They had seen something real, something pure. And it all started with a bottle of milk and a quiet knock on a grocery store door over the next few months. The fund began to grow. Children who had once been ignored were now given hope. School bags replaced torn plastic sacks, shoes replaced bare feet, and hungry stomachs were filled before bedtime. And every time someone asked where this all began, the answer was always the same, with a little girl who made a promise. One cold evening, as winter slowly returned, Lily visited Mr. Dalton at his home. He sat in his usual chair by the window, a warm blanket over his legs, and the same drawing still sitting proudly on his shelf. She brought him his favorite tea and sat beside him in silence for a while. After some time, he turned to her and said, "You've done more than I ever imagined. Lily, you've given me a legacy." She smiled and replied, "You gave me life. Mr. D, this is my thank you." He reached out and held her hand. People think giving means money, but giving is love, time, belief. That's what you gave me back. That night, he slept peacefully, a smile on his face, in his dream. He saw a little girl holding a milk bottle, running through a field of light. She turned and waved, then whispered, "I kept my promise." A few days later, Mr. Dalton passed away in his sleep, quietly and peacefully. News spread around town, and the entire community came to his funeral. But it was not a day of sadness alone, it was a day of celebration. People shared stories, thanked him, and promised to keep his kindness alive. Lee stood beside his casket, holding Hope's hand. She wore a simple dress and a nurse badge over her heart. When her turn came, she placed the promise contract on his chest, folded gently, and whispered, "Debt paid, with love." That night, the store was locked for the last time, but the name Dalton didn't disappear. It was written on school walls, on thank you notes, and in the smiles of every child the fund helped. And above the door of a new children's center built months later, there were simple words carved into stone. This place exists because someone believed in a little girl, and that was the end of one story, but the beginning of many more.